Hello, my name's Sam Gerrans. Today is Monday, 15th of July, 2024, and today the subject is how not to go insane and end up killing yourself. Alright, okay, now I think we can all understand that this is a bit of a clickbaity title, but the subject is in and of itself quite important. I want to wrap up with a few subjects that perhaps will have green leaf subjects that might have some relevance for the longer term. Now, the fact is that we are drowning in quote-unquote information. Most of that information has almost like a sort of amusement or entertainment aspect to it. If you think back to how people lived in the past, even just 150 years ago, people didn't live with this much quote-unquote information, and they were better able to think and better able to conduct their affairs than we are. So although we have information, we're not any wiser. In fact, we're getting stupider. As I've said, we're in a race to the bottom, and we're all getting dumber, and whoever gets there last wins. So that's how it is. But what can you do? What can you do to sort of survive in this insanity? And it is insanity. And, you know, I suppose you wouldn't be watching this if you didn't think to some extent that it is insanity. But it is completely nuts. You weren't meant to live like this. It is, you are living amongst, excuse me, I have to look something up, amongst deluded, insane, and completely evil. Actually, evil's the old word. Yes, that's what we used to call it in the past. Evil in an evil society, and the fact that you notice this will make you seem nuts to the people that you live around, who mostly you see people just adapt to whatever they're given. They like being lied to. They don't have a problem with it. And in my assessment, probably about 2 to 5% of the population of generally of people, probably that percentage is getting less, have an inbuilt resistance, resilience to this. I don't know why, I don't know what the reason for it is. It's nothing to do with intelligence. It's nothing to do with the colour of your eyes, the colour of your skin, or what religion you hold to. It's nothing to do with any of those things. It just so happens that some people don't, they have a hunger for and a kind of an allegiance to, a pre-existing allegiance to truth for some reason. Anyway, we've got too much information. As I've mentioned before, I mean, this isn't the main thrust of this channel, but we are ruled by an elite. That elite itself is debased and becoming more debased. They're sort of crashing down through the castes. They themselves are heading toward the Shudra level. We are ruled by technique. If you want a good book on that, I recommend Jacques Ellul's book, The Technological Society, and increasingly by algorithms. So your feed, whatever that is, through whatever it is that you interface via, whether it's YouTube or whatever, social media, etc., it's quite easy to manage your general development in the necessary direction. Now, just by way of context, it's natural for men, for one set of reasons, and for women for another set of reasons, to want to know what's going on around them. We are built this way, and if you lived in a village, you'd have a right and necessary need to understand what were the power plays in process in order to protect yourself and your family and so on. This pre-existing need is known. Excuse me, the behavioralists know all about it. And now you see people who literally can't walk down the street without checking their phones, because they're essentially addicted to something which, if you go if you go deeply enough, is really associated with the need and to survive. It's a survival instinct, but this has been sort of manipulated and turned against the masses. So we're not designed for this. You're not meant to live in this. And if you find it too much and like it's driving you crazy, well, that's because you're normal. Okay. So all this to say that in my view at least, exclusion, the ability to exclude information, the ability to turn things off, the ability to choose if and when you access this or that, this is the new superpower. We live in a world, let's take for example YouTube, where it's all about clickbait. Some 12-year-old is going to explain to you the meaning of life. Most of it, if you haven't worked it out yet, they're just sort of getting hold of tons of information, running it through ChatGPT with telling it to feed it back to them with a certain type of narrative voice, and then reading it to you. They're not producing anything. They don't know anything. The way it's designed is to keep you hooked, keep you sucking at the teat of this thing, which is essentially making you less and less able to operate. It is a form of a weapon. Does it mean that everybody's involved in it understands this? No, it doesn't. All you need to do is to control the context, and the only choice that you can really make is essentially to turn it off. Obviously, we all need access to the internet to some extent, but what I do is I just practice leaving my phone at home. I just go out and don't take it with me, go and do things. You used to be able to do it before. You can still do it. If and when they turn the electricity off, you'll have to do it all over again. So there you are. So it's natural for human beings to want to have confirmed to them what they know, feel or sense. But again, this new superpower is going to be able to exist without this. The society around you is insane. It's been insane for, I suppose, about 100 years. I mean, when I say insane, if you'd showed it to the ancients, they'd have just vomited and walked off. I mean, insane. So the fact that it seems insane to you means that you're still relatively sane. That's not necessarily a good thing in the short term. It's going to be very difficult for you to talk to family, friends, all those people, because you're going to want them to confirm your instincts to you, but they can't and they won't, because the vast majority of people are basically followers. Okay, that's always been the case. I'm not even saying it's a bad thing. It's just how it is. But this society, and when I say this society, I'm talking about the West, and by the West I mean anywhere with a mobile telephone, which is pretty much everywhere now, is by any objective definition nuts. As the late great Alan Watt, without an S, used to say, he used to say that as this agenda gets rolled out, and if you haven't noticed, we've moved from the 9/11 agenda through to the COVID agenda, and now we're in the Third World War agenda, with Russia being the evil empire, all the rest of it. And I'm sure COVID will be coming back, and all kinds of things will be coming back, and they'll all get mixed together. So you'll have a COVID war or whatever it is, some new nuts thing. What he said was that as this agenda is rolled out, and it is an agenda to a large extent, it'll be harder and harder to hold on to your own mind. If you live in the West, and increasingly actually everywhere, it's one conveyor belt. If you can see the difference between men and women, they've got some names to call you, and probably you'll lose your tenure or your job or whatever it is, at least your friends, if you just mention obvious truth. So all this to say, because if you've worked it out, that I'm sort of handing over the reins in some ways to some extent, I want to cover some key things. The superpower is going to be the ability to exclude more. You can't take it in. The more information is sort of infotainment that you try to take in, the less able you're going to be to think. And essentially there is only really one thing, or one key thing, that you really need to keep your mind on. And I'm turning now to the Quran. This is from reader.quranite.com, and on YouTube and my Substack, I'll link to this if I think of it down below. At verse 51:9, it says, deluded away from it. And it here means the day of judgment. is he who is deluded. This is a really good sort of test as things go insane. Is the person that who's talking to you, or the source of information, do they in any, I'm not talking about a particular religion, but do they reference the day of judgment? Because if they don't, it's purely subjective. It's temporal. It's going to have an end, and it serves, quote unquote, an agenda. I'm sure I'm going to get people coming on saying, "Oh, well, religion's this and religion's that." Yeah, read my work a little bit more deeply, you know, if you want to come in and make those sorts of claims. But all that to say, for myself, I concentrate on scripture. The more that one reads it, the more one realizes how all of this insanity is temporary. The people who are forwarding and advancing this agenda, they're mortal. We all go to God. And once you see things in those terms, in the terms of eternity versus temporality, then it all becomes clear. And obviously we have to live in the world to a certain extent. But if you make that, it doesn't have to be the Quran, I mean, but you know, a scripture, your foundation and your mainstay, and only choose to diverge from that to this temporal insanity as a choice that you have to do in order to, you know, operate in the world, you will retain a strength that will see you through this time of objective insanity. And it is insanity. It's a very difficult time to operate psychologically. And for those who care about truth, I think it's even in some ways worse. Anyway, that's my advice for what it's worth. I tried to keep it under 15 minutes, something like that. I'll link to this particular verse down below. That's it for now. Thanks for listening, and bye for now.